Welcome back, custom car fans, to another episode on BK's post-van build. Today we are going to be delving into some details on the workings of the vehicle, jobs that fall between the cracks of some of the previous episodes. So previously we've covered big things like the chassis fabrication, all the coating side of things, and today we're going to delve into details. So we're going to be fitting these lovely Dakota Digital RTX gauges, and for those to work we've got to fit a whole load of control modules. We've got to get a gear position indicator sorted on the transmission, and then we're going to move through a bit of fabrication work as well. We've got the seat bases to do, the seat belts to mount. So let's cut straight into the action and show you what we've been up to. Seat belts next. The original seat belt arrangement bolts them onto a bar running through the back of the seat base. We've had to remake the seat base to accommodate Land Rover seats, Defender seats. So we're going to go with something similar, but I think I'm basically just going to beef this up a bit because that, to me, even if it's just visually, does not look substantial enough. So I'm going to go with something a lot bigger coming out, and then the inertia reel for the lap belt on this side, and then the other side is a rigid based receiver. Little recap of what I've done so far to mount these seat belts. The tube has now got a captive nut welded to the back of a plate, which is welded to the ends of the tube and smoothed off. So now I've got a double-ended captive nutted tube, which I'm going to now mount into the seat base frame. And the way I'm going to do that is drill a hole in each end with a hole saw, slide it through, center it up and weld it on. Holes drilled, tube inserted. I'm just going to measure to make sure it is centered. That's there, yep, bang on. So now I'll just test fit that to make sure that those are going to be in the right place. They should be. No reason why they wouldn't be, but it's worth checking before nailing them in. Perfect. Love it when a plan comes together. I can weld that in now fully, and then I'll do the other one exactly the same. And there you go, 2 seat bases done with the seat belt bar in situ. So now it's time to get some paint on these so they don't let the side down in that cab area that's looking so nice. Black, I think. And I'm back in the paint booth again, this time with the freshly sandblasted seat bases and seat runners. Now last time I was spraying some epoxy, somebody kindly picked up on the fact that I wasn't wearing the correct PPE, which I should have been. So this time I'm going to make sure I'm all suited up with my air fed on and do things properly, because just because I was rushing, I shouldn't have cut those corners. Let's go. And whilst the easy to access areas have probably got enough film weight on them now to get the correct amount of protection from the epoxy, I am going to go around one more time, do another coat, just to make sure that some of the hard to reach areas have got enough on there as well. Because I can see a few places where it's just a little bit too see-through and it hasn't quite got that build. Second coat. And now it's time for some black. There's a lot of elements in building a vehicle like this, and one of those, which doesn't feature heavily in this build in some respects because we're going quite low spec, is audio. Now, you're not going to be able to hear a great deal in that thing, but I think primarily it's about sat-nav, to be honest. So we've got a nice Pioneer DAB head unit. Obviously DAB aerial to go with that. And then the tricky thing with this build is working out speakers, because there's nowhere to put them, basically. There's no standard parcel shelf, door speakers, anything like that. So we're going to go with these. These are Pioneer, again, self-contained units, typically would go on a parcel shelf, but it looks like, from what I could find out online, that they come with some brackets. I'm sure we're going to have to mess around with those to make it work, and I'm hoping that whilst they're not going to be groundbreaking audio, that they'll be okay. And like I say, the primary function really is for sat-nav and just a few tunes to stop the long journeys being too dull. There's a threaded boss here that we'll be able to use to mount this. Speakers need to be mounted on something and out of the way, because who wants these on show in a car like this, really? So let's get inside the vehicle. And this is where I'm proposing to put them. That's up in there. A few riv nuts to secure them up to the cross members, and they're nice and tucked away, but just behind the driver's head and passenger's head, so you should be able to hear it. Well, the next thing to do is to check that the aperture on our dash, our laser cut and folded fabricated dash, is the correct size for the head unit. I'm pretty sure it will be, but you never know. Here is our dash, here is our head unit. Moment of truth, I guess. Okay. So what that is it's the right size for the head unit itself, but not for the cage that goes in. So I'm just going to have to open this up slightly to fit the body, the cage, and then we're golden. It's time to get the Dakota Digital stuff in the van, and that's really exciting because that stuff is real slick, really nice stuff. It does require a little bit of reading by the look of it. There's over 100 pages of installation and operation manual there. I'm hoping that a lot of it is there just in case you need it. So I'm going to get the control module boxes mounted first, make sure I've got good access for those for wiring. A lot of the wiring between those boxes is pretty self-explanatory, and then there'll be a few power feeds. So I'm not anticipating too much difficulty there. I think referring to these will be more to do with like mounting the sensor for the gear position indicator. That might be where that comes in handy. At least I hope so. I don't fancy reading 100 pages. Okay, so I've got to mount these 3 boxes, and I think I've worked out how I'm going to do that. So I haven't got the gauge cluster in at the moment because this is where I think I'm going to have to mount everything. So the main one for the gauges is going to go in here. And then I've got the gear position unit, that'll go in there, and that leaves a nice little space in the middle for the GPS one. With the control boxes mounted, I've started putting a few of the cables in. I think I just need to check that I've actually got the headroom for these in the dash housing, because they're a little bit higher up than I had anticipated. So I'm going to put the dash housing back on, and I'm going to just mock up a few things. There was plenty of headroom up in the dash housing, and I couldn't resist putting the gauges in and the head unit. Oh, it looks so good. That's really going to help motivate me to finish off the wiring. Should we get the seats in as well? Yeah, go on. Okay, you ready for the seats? They look really good, actually. I'm super glad that I've put them in. They look fantastic. The bases came out really good. I need a few bolts to fix the seat bases to the runners, but this will give you an idea of how this cab area is shaping up. Pretty cool, I think you'll agree. I think it's got just the right level of comfort in here. You know, obviously we've got power, we've got a double DIN DAB Pioneer head unit, the Dakota Digital RTX gauges. These will be so trick once we fire these up. And then the nice custom touches like the shifter, the Cerakoted pedals with the speed holes. I think this is shaping up to be my favourite part of the build, to be honest. It's going to be such a cool place to be, a real nice space when you're driving, just the right balance of everything. I wish I could get the steering wheel in to show you that as well, and the column, but unfortunately we need access to finish the wiring. Anyway, that's certainly going to see me through the tedious tasks of wiring everything up, so I'm glad I did that. Next job is mounting this sensor for the gear position. It comes with a whole load of brackets. This is all Dakota Digital stuff, and this is obviously then compatible, or built to be integrated with the dash. It comes with a whole load of brackets here, but from quick scan of the fitting manual, the installation manual, most of that is for C4, C6 or GM transmissions. Okay, well, there's a whole load of bits. I went through a few different things to try and work out a way of doing it, and actually this bracket might be a good starting point. I dug out the clamp for the control cable and the lever because we'd taken them off when taking it out of the car. So that's the arrangement of those. And what I'm going to try and do is mimic the swing of the control lever as much as possible with the sensor lever, because the stops are probably an even broader angle than the control lever here. See the angle of that versus the angle of that. So I think we're going to have plenty of movement within the sensor. And actually, if I put that at that height, the pivot point of the sensor and the control lever are not too dissimilar in height. And if I use this longer lever, then I've got a few adjustment points on there, and hopefully I should be able to set that up with the threaded bar and the little teeny rose joints. I wish I could speed some of these bits up in reality like you can on the edit. Let's get a bit closer to the action. I've kept the short swing arm on the sensor because it may give me a little gearing up from the movement on here, just to maximize the amount of travel we get on the sensor, as it seemed to suggest that that was recommended. And now I need to work out how I'm attaching it to this arm on the gearbox, the selector arm. I could just drill through there and put a rose joint on, but this angle doesn't sit well with me. I'm not happy about that. So what I want to do is just space that out so it's more parallel to the surface of the arms, less chance of it binding up on the rose joints. There's next to no load on this. There's very little resistance from the sensor, so it doesn't need to be particularly strong, as you can tell from the size of the fixings and the threaded bar that they send with it. I hope the folder can handle this. Welded the little bracket on. Now I can put this back together. So 3 should be the middle. And the reason I'm doing that is because this is easy to work out the middle visually. It's just vertical. Near enough. And then I'm going to cut that long to start with. It's pretty much fully threaded in at that end as well. So I'm going to cut that on the longer side, just so that I've got a little bit of material to take off if I need to. Here we go, moment of truth. Right, that's at the front of its travel, and that's at the back of its travel. Well, it works. It would be nice to see a little bit more range of motion there, so I might play around with that to try and achieve that. Yeah, that's a bit better. Look at that. This here is an EGR cooler and this is an EGR valve, and these cause nothing but problems on diesel engines. So we're going to get rid of them, and we're going to do that before we get it in the chassis because it's just nice and easy to get to it here on the bench. We've got a block off kit, EGR delete kit, whatever you want to call it. This replaces the valve at the top. This bag full of flanges and block-off plates will be for the cooler, and then these little bungs will be for the coolant hoses that run to the cooler. So we'll get that off. I think there's a couple of other little jobs to do, but we'll start with this one. And there we go, EGR valve removed. We've got a bung in the coolant hose with a little bleed screw in there, which is handy. The cooler that would have been here is gone, and the little 2-bolt blanking plate has been installed where the flange of that was. So that all that remains now is when we connect the bottom radiator hose, there's a little tail that would have gone onto the bottom of the EGR cooler, and that will need the other bung installing in there. With that job done, I'm going to move around to here, and I'm going to do the oil pressure sender here. So this is the factory one. I'm going to take this out and put the Dakota Digital one in. That's in the bottom of the oil filter housing. Oh, and the silicon vac line that came off the EGR valve up here, I've routed through down to here and popped it onto a T-piece where there was a tail that needed blanking. So just looped it through to seal that off. So that just leaves the one that goes down to the engine mounts. All right. Are we ready to make a mess? So I've got to catch pot. Again, I'm not wearing gloves because what will happen if I wear gloves is I'll drop this. I know I will. So I'd rather get a bit of oil on me. Here we go. Oh, that's not too bad. We must have drained that fairly effectively before. Right, what have we got? We have got a very fine thread on the Dakota and a very coarse thread on the BMW. And annoyingly, they're kind of similar. So I may not even have a boss in this kit as an adapter. We might be in luck. Got this adapter here, and this is the original, and they look to me to be the same. Yep, threads match up. All right, let's just gently spin that in and see what we got. Oh, yes. Oh, winner, 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 winner. Great. Oh, that's good result. It's time to get the engine swung back into the chassis. It's exciting. I'm going to have to calm down a little bit, take my time, because I don't want to scratch anything, don't want to cause myself any undue work, do I? All right, let's see if this will even go over the engine crane. Oh, kind of, just not quite fully. And that has got to come back quite a way. Okay, I might need to get the jack and pull that over the chassis. All right, she will, it comes back and under here, so that's going to be the trickiest bit. I've got to let it down a bit, swing it under, swing it. Let's just go for it. We'll take our time, but equally, we just got to crack on. If you see it going to touch anything, just shout, would you? Just adjusting the angle of the drivetrain here to swing the end of the gearbox in first, because we've got a little bit clearance issue on this side on the sump. I don't want to have to swing it so far over that way that I'm worried about hitting stuff that side. So by using the balance bar, I can achieve some angle, which is really handy. Very much needed sometimes, like now. All right. We do have a little bit of height we can drop out of that as well. Bit of tape on each side first, and then I've just popped this up in before remembering that I needed to turn the camera on. So I've got a nut spun on the bottom here, so this isn't going to drop out. hopefully anytime soon. And now I've basically got to pull this up to be able to get some fixings in. I am starting to take a bit of weight off the transmission, so maybe I should use the jack so it's a bit more controlled. Let's put this underneath to protect the paintwork. Well, there we go. Yet again, we have a rolling chassis, but this time it's all painted, nothing got damaged, and it's all going back together for the final time. So I think that's a good place to wrap this episode up. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for all your positive comments. It really does help keep me trudging on with some of the more tedious jobs. Remember, click that like button, the subscribe button to keep up to date so you don't miss a single episode. And we'll see you in the next one where hopefully we'll reunite the body with the chassis. Thanks, everybody.